The Rain Man of Wrestling. Ha ha ha. Please subscribe, comment, like, and share these videos. 2003, 2004, I'd wrestled for OVW for about 8 years. I'd been put under WWE developmental contract, along with a lot of the other guys that were my friends that were locals from Southern Indiana, Louisville, Kentucky metropolitan area. All those guys have been called up. The WWE developmental guys that they sent there that I'd become friends with, they all got called up. Guys like Brock Lesnar, like Batista, like Randy Orton, like Cena, and then my real good friends like Danny Basham, Doug Basham, and Rob Conway. And I got to the point where I didn't know if I would ever get called up or not. I felt like I might just end up being an OVW coach for a career, which I didn't mind too much. I was written in, Cornette wrote me in as a top babyface or top heel on the card. I was living in my own bed. I was sleeping in my own bed every night. All the live events were within 2 hours away. But I'd seen a lot of the other WWE developmental guys that they got sent down complain about being in Louisville because they didn't like it. And the next thing you know, they would get called up. And I tell guys this all the time, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So I called Doug Basham one day. I said, Doug, I think I'm going to try to quit and try to go to Japan. Now, I didn't know anybody in Japan. I had no idea how to get there. And I really wasn't going to quit. I was just bluffing to see what would happen. So Doug told Dean Malenko. Dean told Johnny Ace. Johnny Ace told Vince McMahon. And on February the 23rd, 2004, I was in a meeting with Vince McMahon and Stephanie. Now, I'm going to rewind just for a second. The Hustler Rip Rogers was one of the trainers for OVW, one of my personal mentors and a good friend. And he was always trying to give us different ideas for characters that we might be able to create and tweak and pitch. So he gave me the idea, Nixon, because he called me Nixon. What about a wrestler that wasn't very smart? You know, he couldn't put a square peg in a square hole. He wasn't very social, but when he got in the ring, he was flawless. He was excellent because he'd seen wrestling his entire life. Basically, a Rain Man of wrestling, an idiot savant of professional wrestling. So this was about mid-2003. I kind of filed that in the back of my head and really didn't give it any thought. The agents came down. Guys like Arn Anderson, Dean Malenko, Fit Finley, and I pitched that to them once. And I remember Arn said, putting the glasses up, we're more reality-based now. That wouldn't work. Okay, all right, well, back to the drawing board. A couple months later, some of the writers came down. And the writers didn't come down to OVW often, but a group of the writers came down, and I pitched that character to them, the idiots of art wrestling. Vince would never do that. Oh, my gosh, no, he wouldn't do anything like that. Okay, back to the drawing board again. So now, flash forward, February 23rd, 2004, I'm in the meeting with Vince McMahon and Stephanie, and Vince goes, I want to get back to character-based wrestling. It just came out of my mouth. I said, well, what about a wrestler that might not be the most social, can't really put a square peg in a square hole, might not be able to tie his shoes, but when the bell rings, he's flawless at professional wrestling because he's watched it his whole life. He's a fan of professional wrestling. And there was another part of the Eugene character that never really got fleshed out, but Eugene would know all the trivia, the history. He could tell you, the statistics and the attendance and the gate and every little minute trivia detail that anybody could ever think up. So I pitched that out, the idiots of art wrestling. And Vince was standing there rubbing his chin. The Rain Man of wrestling. Ha, ha, ha. At that point, Stone Cold Steve Austin walked into Vince's office. Now, Stone Cold was coming back because they were taping a Saturday Night's Main Event before Raw that night. And Vince goes, Steve, have you ever seen this guy wrestle? Austin looks at me and goes, no, I don't think I have. Well, I said, the Nightmare Danny Davis trained me because I knew that Danny Davis and Steve Austin had met and become friends when they both wrestled in Dallas. And Austin goes, well, he's probably one of the best. And right then and there, that was the vote of confidence. I feel that Vince goes, well, great, we'll start on Monday. We didn't actually start on Monday. It was about 2 months later. And sometime in March, I went in and I filmed. Remember how they used to do the coming soon, this wrestler, and they would air those week after week until the wrestler debuted? We filmed a bunch of those, but they never ended up airing. But then on April 5th, 2004, the Toyota Center in Houston, Eugene made his debut. And I remember the night before, I got to Houston, got to the TV hotel, and I felt so sick. I had the flu. Something was wrong. And I took as much NyQuil as I could, and I slept as much as I could. And the next day, I had medicine head, but that was the day that Eugene debuted. William Regal walks into Eric Bischoff's office. Eric Bischoff says, I've got a job for you. Take care of my nephew. And then Regal meets Eugene, and the antics ensued. Putting Regal with Eugene was probably the best thing about the Eugene character, because we were now the odd couple that I could play off him, and he is so good, so great, that he's really what made the tandem, the duo. And it was all a result of the WWE writers. I tell guys all the time, you can have a great character, you can have a great idea, but if the writers can't write for you, there's not much that you're going to be able to do. And Brian Gerwick was the guy that wrote a lot of the Rock stuff, and he wrote all of Eugene's stuff, and it was phenomenal. Forever grateful to Bischoff, to William Regal, and to Brian Gerwick. And that was the day that Eugene debuted on Monday Night Raw. If you like this video and you want to see more content from Eugene behind the scenes, click on one of these videos. They are awesome.